So this question is about kind of the data we should be looking at. What data do you suggest should be collected in people analytics models and how to collect them? Obviously, that's going to depend on the questions we want to ask, but are there some standards that we probably want to make sure that we have?
Yeah, I mean, something I talk about quite a bit in classes that I teach is this kind of 2x2 idea of new and existing data sort of on one axis, and then so if you think about, okay, we have internal and external data as well, so that's the other axis. But so if you just think about the combination there, what a lot of companies go to is the existing internal data, that cell of the quadrant, if you will, and sort of try to really make the most of that data, which is great. But oftentimes, to your point, the question or the issue that you're trying to solve for requires data from the other quadrants, and it's going to take some effort to pull in maybe external data to account for the fact that maybe your units work in or operate in different local labor market environments. So you need unemployment data from BLS or something. So external data, and then new data collection, not just existing data, but thinking, okay, we have this issue, it's really important. We want to know how to improve the quality of hire. Let's interview some folks or do a survey. We haven't done it before, so. To me, it's around starting with the question and then thinking about the data sources you have, and if they're not appropriate, then thinking beyond that. But the other point I'd say is that we're seeing a lot more with unstructured data, so we always think of kind of your rows and columns structured data sets, and that's of course very helpful, but with so much information available now through either social media or internal email or networks or what have you, not that it's always kind of giving you some magical insight, but it's yet another data source that companies are, I think, starting to take a look at that's beyond your traditional rows and columns.
Yeah, makes sense. This question is a little bit along the same lines, but it says, we keep saying workforce analytics. What are these companies really tracking? I mean, and again, a lot of variability, I'm sure, but do you see like any company that's advanced to a certain point in analytics is probably at least looking at X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge with terminology in this area is that we don't have kind of common agreement on what metrics, analytics, and these other terms, people insights. There's lots of terms thrown around for this. And so you might have an analytics group and they're not actually doing analytics, they're doing a lot of reporting, right? So if we're talking purely about analytics, sort of looking at bringing different data sources together, running statistical models and so forth, I think the most common is still attrition, right? Flight risk kinds of analyses to try to get a handle on who's likely to leave and when. You still see a lot with engagement data, a lot with workforce planning, trying to get ahead of who's going to be where in 1 year, couple of years, right, and plan if at all possible for those scenarios given historical data. I think a lot of companies are looking at things like internal mobility, how people move up through and out of the organization, and segmenting that by different employee groups or populations. So it's kind of some common themes in terms of where analytics is being applied, and that would be at the high level. I think beneath that it's these ad hoc projects that have a very important business application or use that might not be your run-of-the-mill attrition modeling, but that are very important. So you're trying to forecast retirements and understand, kind of what you need to do to plan for that, or you're having trouble recruiting this one geographic area. So it's kind of this, very focused study to try to understand what's happening in that domain. So you have some commonalities, but then some, more specific projects I think that are coming up.